Hey everyone, I started this YouTube channel to share my knowledge and my enthusiasm for the sport of long distance running. I'm more than happy to share space here with anybody who can bring you something unique. My guest today is no exception to that rule. He's an amazing running coach and he's also the host of the RunBuzz podcast. So please join me for this marathon of an interview with Steve Carmichael. We cover a lot and I hope you'll learn a lot, so here we go. Hello, everyone. Tonight I'm joined by a man who is a runner and a doubly certified running coach from the Columbus, Ohio region. He's the founder and host of the world-renowned RunBuzz podcast and online running community. His science-based Pacebuilders training program and heartfelt encouragement have seen literally thousands of runners, including myself, through tough injuries and pushed us to new PRs. I could go on and on singing his praises, but without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome Steve Carmichael to my channel. Thank you for being here, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all the kudos. That was awesome.
Well, you've done a lot, and you've done a lot to help me in the past. Just being part of the RunBuzz community and reading and listening to you over the last few years, it's an immense help. And for me, it's a real honor to be able to hopefully bring you to a wider audience, because there are a lot of runners out there I know who will really, really benefit from the knowledge that you have and your awesome attitude.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Really, just to jump into it, I'd like to know a little bit about your athletic background.
So I would say I'm a late onset runner. I didn't actually start running till my mid 30s, actually 37-ish, 38, somewhere in there. Most of the time growing up, I grew up in a time when we didn't have the internet, so we were outside all the time, always playing ball. I played Little League soccer. I played Little League football all the way up through high school, played football, joined the military when I was 18, and was active until about the time I got out at about 24 years of age. Got into my career just overall. I just wrapped myself into the career, and the fitness stuff just went out the window. And it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s that I had really noticed that I struggled just going up and down the stairs. I just had a newborn baby, and I was carrying her up the stairs, and I was huffing and puffing by the time I got up a flight of stairs. And I was at that age where I had some friends who started to have some health problems, and I started worrying about myself. And so that's how I got back into running. But my fitness background, I had periods of time where I'd go into, one of those moments where you get motivated to go out and do something active, and I'd start weight training, maybe join a gym for a month or two, and then a month or two goes by, and the next thing you know, I ended up at a buffet and not the gym. And then I wouldn't do anything for a few months, and then I'd get motivated again, and I'd go do something, and nothing ever really stuck. I would always make excuses of why my work came first, why my family came first. And it wasn't until I had a little bit of a health scare that I needed to go see a doctor when I was probably 37-ish, somewhere. I'm a little phasey on the time because it's been a while. I'm 51 now, so some years gone by. So that's really how I started out, being a very athletic kid and in high school playing sports. And then something, always sat there in the back of my mind that resurfaced many, many years later when I was having some health problems.
Gotcha. So that was the main impetus behind you getting active again. But what was it specifically that sort of pushed you into running specifically?
So I went to the doctor's office, and I had some blood work done, and my numbers were high in the sense that he would consider that probably pre-diabetic. My liver enzymes were really high, and I wasn't somebody who was drinking or using any kind of drugs or anything. And so they started looking in and discovered that I had fatty liver accumulating around my liver, causing the enzymes to get real high. And so I asked the doctor, it's like, well, what do I do? He's like, well, if you don't do anything, he says, that can develop into psoriasis after 20, 30 years. And that kind of scary. I was like, oh, so my joke is maybe I should start drinking now. I'm going to have psoriasis, or not cirrhosis. I didn't mean psoriasis.
I got
I was going to have cirrhosis, you know, and he's like, no, that's not what you're doing. But he said, you know, you're suffering as the result of your last 20 years of lifestyle, you know, my 20s and 30s. And he's like, you need to get active again. You need to, you know, clean up your diet and he said, what you do in the next 10 years will impact the 20 years after that. And he said, you know, you're 37 years old. He said, if you want to be healthy in your 50s and 60s, he says, now's the time to make those changes, because we always delay our health by usually 10, 15 years.
Gotcha.
So I came home, I was a little aggravated in myself, you know, I just was kind of down, and I decided I was going to go out for a run, because I ran when I was in the military. I ran again in high school, went out for a run, made it about 3 driveways before I had to stop and walk. I was so out of shape. But I was so adamant about doing it. I had a friend who lost a couple 100 pounds through running. He was running 5Ks, 2 or 3 a week. And I saw what he was doing. And even though it wasn't at the same time that I started running, that again, I think was a big motivator for me to just go out and try it. And it was the first sport I signed up for a 5-mile race. He had told me, he's like, sign up for a race. He says, it'll keep you motivated. And sure enough, and I went out and ran that 5-mile race about 6 months later. I didn't know what I was doing. I got out there. I ran as fast as I could run. A mile into the race, I couldn't run anymore. I had used up all my energy in that first mile. It was like a 6.5-minute mile, though. I was really proud of it. And I walked and ran the rest of the way through the race, but I was so caught up in the adrenaline of running with 3,000-4,000 people on Thanksgiving morning that I was just like, this is amazing. Like, I was hooked. And I immediately went home after sleeping about 6-7 hours that day, because I was sore. I signed up for my first half marathon, and
wow,
that's how I got essentially into running. Is I got hooked in the race day experience.
I was going to say, if you went straight to a half marathon, it sounds like you were all in at that point.
I have a tendency of just jumping in, and whether I'm ready for something or not, it's just like character.
Yeah, no, I think I can identify with that. I'm very much the same way. My first race, I went straight from zero. As we went through when I was a guest on your podcast, I went straight from the guy who was scared to run outside. I was on my treadmill. And first time I made it out the door was for a half marathon. And that was it.
We talked about that. I remember that. And I think I remember telling you that time that my first 3 months running, I ran at night, and I ran over at the local schoolhouse because I didn't want people to see me, because I thought, I'm 37 years old, which seems young to me now, but I felt old and I felt like ridiculous. And I was just like, I didn't want people to see me. So I ran in the dark, and it took 3 months probably before I would run in the daytime. And looking back, that's that's the silliest thing, but I identify with that. Like, I understand. It's like, there's that fear or embarrassment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the
fear
way I
being
felt.
compared. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very much like, I just felt like I was kind of a couch potato-y kind of guy. And to go out there, for me, I was probably 42 or 43 years old at that point. And I just didn't want my neighbors just having something to laugh at. So, and what a mistake that is. I just want to pass that on to anybody who's watching that, who's watching this, I should say, and has just maybe begun running. Don't be intimidated. It's silly. Go take a chance. You're going to do great. Everybody really is on your side. There's nothing better, I think, than seeing somebody who's just starting.
Yeah. I was running with a brand new person one time, and she was really self-conscious about her running, and she was afraid. She was terrified to come out and join the running club that I was in. And I ran with her because she was new, and I was running, and she was just telling me, like, oh, I'm so, like, what are people thinking of me? They must think I'm slow. And some people had been coming towards us and ran past us. And I said, what was that person wearing that ran by you? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, did you notice anything about the person running by? And she says, no. I says, nobody's paying attention to you either. It's like, I was like, we're all out here. We're all doing, I mean, some people probably are, but like, we don't pay attention to that level that somebody's thinking self-conscious,
Exactly.
And then I also told her, I said, I started running, and I mentioned a minute ago, I started running because I observed other people doing it who were motivating me, and it planted that seed. You never know who's watching you. And that's an important thing, is that you might be afraid to be out running, but you don't know who you're inspiring by being out there running.
Well said.
The people driving by down the road in their car coming home from work wish they could be you. And
exactly.
And that's exactly the thing. I drove by people all the time. I drive by a freeway. It's got a running trail right next to it. And I remember driving home every single day for years going, I really need to be out there running. Yeah. And it took longer. I'm stubborn. It took me a while to get out there, but I eventually did. So
Exactly. That's the big thing. Everybody just get out there, give it a shot. You'll find it's easier than you thought it was. And way more people are on your side than you may expect.
Yep, absolutely.
To get back to your story, Steve, tell me a little bit, like once you got started and you got past that self-consciousness, that initial sort of being scared to be out there. Take me through some of the highlights of your personal running history. Tell me about some of your PRs if you want to go there. If you don't, that's fine too. But yeah, I'm just curious how you progressed through your running career.
Yeah, so I never intended to set out to be a coach. I never intended to set out to have a podcast. I just set out to really just get my health back under control. And for the first year or two, I was pretty much running solo. I did join a running club, a very large running club in town. I went from a straight 5 mile to a half marathon. 2 weeks before the half marathon, I get a stress fracture because I didn't know how to train. I wasn't following training plans. I just ran a little bit more every single day. I took that time off, took 6 weeks off for that to heal. And at that point, I'm like, well, I already trained for the half, and the full's coming up in the fall. So I went straight from a 5 mile to a full. I did have a half marathon in there as kind of a warm up, but it was kind of like a halfway point. And I got addicted to the running community and the people I was running with. They became my friends. I just surrounded it. But I never. There's very few periods of time where I really just pushed performance, or it was always about, could I run farther early on in my career? Like I kept wanting to do farther and farther. I tried running some 50Ks in training, and by the time I got to that point, my body was really falling apart. I really struggled above the 20-mile mark. And
that's natural.
So
that's one of those things. It doesn't matter how hard you train. That's just
I've run 3 marathons. I have not run any marathons in a number of years. I tend not to gravitate towards those. They beat me up in the time training and stuff like that. I do run a lot of 10Ks and half marathons. I have not run much in the last few years in terms of not in terms of racing.
Gotcha.
And usually it does the fact that I also have a local sports performance company that I train middle school, high school, like off-season athletes. In addition to my online stuff. And so my weekends are tied up. The running club takes up my Saturdays. When we're not in COVID, of course. I had some injury. I had a period of time where I was off running for 18 months due to a pretty serious plantar fasciitis, bone spur that required 2 surgeries. And so, it really changed my aspect of running. So 3 marathons, probably 20-ish halves. I don't even keep track. I'm not a person that collects medals. I do collect them. I grab them. I throw them in a drawer. I don't hang them. I don't know why. I've never been somebody who I run for fitness primarily. I do go through periods of time though where I want to challenge myself. I think my PR in the half is a 2:01. I think I missed a 2. My PR in the marathon out of the 3, the first one was the best one. It was a 5:01. Now, I wasn't training real hard for it. I trained harder for the second one, which was the Chicago Marathon. I underestimated how crowded the Chicago Marathon is. I also estimated that it's hard to run a marathon in 90, 93, 94 degree weather because I picked the year that it was really
you
hot.
had a tough year. Wow.
So yeah, that one had me really hurting at the end. The third marathon was Columbus again. So Columbus was my first. Columbus was my third. When I went back to that marathon, I was 15 miles into it. We were running through Ohio Stadium on on the southern part of the stadium, and there's a stands, and I was looking up at the stands because that's where I was supposed to meet my kids. And
Okay.
you know, it's a place where the spectators can watch and they can still sit in the horseshoe. And I was waving, and as I was looking up, a lady came out in front of me who was taking a picture up into the stands of her kids, and I didn't see her, and I went over the top of her. And as I went over the top of her, I landed into a metal guardrail that they trap or crowd control. And I ended up getting like this muscular neuro, kind of like somebody hit your funny bone, but every third step, it was like my funny bone. I should have took myself out of the race because I pretty much walked and ran. I could run 100 yards and then I'd have to walk a few steps, run 100 yards. My feet would give out. I would run every so many steps. My leg would give out. I had some sort of back nerve issue.
Wow.
And so that race was a wash. I was so angry, you know, I had to I was not happy. Trained all summer to that. I did finish.
Hats off to you for doing
I had trained probably the best for that because by the third time I knew what I was doing. And again, this was before I had started coaching and really got into knowing what I was doing. I was kind of that. It was just a horrible experience.
Gotcha. Wow. I mean, that's a heck of a story. I mean,
yeah.
You know, like I said, hats off to you for even completing that. I don't think I would have done the same.
Yeah, but I've gotten down to 27, 26 minute 5K times, you know, and I'm not a 5K runner. I don't tend to run them. But I go in periods of phases where I'll work on speed and performance. Usually I'm trying to try something out. I'm trying to kind of dial in my training, but you know, after the running injury 6 years ago, 6 years ago, my whole attitude changed for running. I want to be running when I'm 80 years old and I want to stay healthy and I'm doing it for physical fitness. Gotcha.
So it's more of a process thing for you. You just enjoy the process of actually training.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. So that kind of answers my next question. I was going to ask you what motivates you now and what are your future running goals? Do you think you'll ever go back to racing in any capacity, or is it just more about just staying in shape at this point?
Yeah, I still sign up for half marathons. You know, I signed up for half marathon here in Columbus. And it was canceled due to COVID. I'm holding off for the fall to see if they're going to have a race in the fall. So the Columbus Marathon has a half, and so I still want to do 2-3 halves a year, and I still want to do some 10Ks. I just haven't been as much as I have. When I first started, I was racing almost every other week.
Wow.
And I got to the point where I could run a half marathon every weekend, not race it, but run it. Mm-hmm. And I just got kind of burnt out. It's, you know, I got to the point where it's like I had to travel if I wanted to go to a nice race, you know. I was like, because I've been to all the local ones so many times, it's like, do I really want to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and go run a race that I've run before? But now it's kind of like I do want to go back and run them because, you know, my friends are here in town, obviously. And so it's just as much as a social event as it is a race for me. I've done a couple destination races. We did the Cherry Blossom as part of the RunBuzz community. We met. I
remember watching
that one. That was an amazing fun time.
Yeah, the pictures looked amazing. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'll go back if I ever get the opportunity. That was incredible. Just the most scenic race course I've been on.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, for me, that's only like a 6-hour trip from here. So yeah, that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah,
I'll definitely have to try that one out. Very cool. So okay, so I think you answered my next question already. Your favorite distance seems to be like 10K half marathon in there.
Yeah, mid distance.
Okay.
I want to get back into the half marathon. It would be my preference, but yeah, it's right now my life is so busy that, you know, and I know that's an excuse being a coach, I should know that, but I put 40 hours in at work, and then I put 40 hours in my business here, and then I coach locally as well on the weekends with my running club and my sports performance business. So, you know, it's my full-time life. In a lot of ways. So often my own personal running suffers, other than, you know, my fitness running, just to keep me in shape right now.
Gotcha. So what is your, if you don't mind my asking, what does your schedule look like as far as days a week that you run? How many miles generally do you cover? Does it change from season to season?
Yeah, it bounces around. With the last couple months, it's been a little less than normal, but I would say my average is around 20 miles a week. I'll do 3 to 4 runs a week. Right now I'm doing more strength training and running 3 days a week, and then doing 2 days of strength training. And so I'm running somewhere between 5-6 miles, per run when I go out. Some days more. If I'm strapped for time, I'll put 3 in. If I have a little bit more time on a Saturday, I'll put 6 or 7. But I find for me, it's a good maintenance run. It keeps me healthy, keeps me still motivated, and again, that'll change if I train for the fall. I'll definitely train for a spring marathon or a half marathon, because the Cap City here in Columbus is my favorite race in terms of an annual spring race, and so I do that one every year, except this year it got canceled. So
yeah, my spring 2020 marathon got canceled 72 hours before the race was to take place. I was literally on my way to the car to drive to the city where the race was going to take place, and bang, it was gone. So yeah. At this point, I'm hoping that spring 20, I've got a race booked for this autumn coming up, and I'm I wouldn't say counting on the fact, but I'm assuming at this point that it's going to be canceled now that COVID seems to be dragging on a little bit longer than maybe, at least I expected. But spring 2021 is when I'm full guns. I'm expecting to race again. So hopefully.
Yeah. We'll get back. It's just uncertain times right now. It's hard to anticipate what to do right now, because everything isn't up in the air. It's just a crazy time in this world right now. Yeah.
Well, since you've said that, I'm going to take that as an opportunity to maybe go off script a little bit here and ask you what, as a coach, or even in terms of your own motivation, what do you think COVID has done? Is it harder for you or for your clients to stay motivated now that there's no short-term race goal in sight? Or have you found that more people are maybe jumping into running than before, and then it's maybe easier to get people motivated?
Yeah. From a business perspective, I have suffered quite a bit just because of all the race cancellations. I was coaching a few kids for their senior and junior track seasons, and their track seasons were canceled. Cross country is still salvageable at this point, because it looks like we're going to have a cross country season. As far as the online stuff, I lost some coaching clients that had just joined because they had a race that they wanted to do. But the vast majority of the people that I coach have been with me a couple years now. I do have a pretty low turnover in terms of the people I coach. They have hung around. I think that the thing that I was trying to get across to people, both in the community and is really thinking about, this is an opportunity for us to not always just focus on races. I think as runners, we get so heads down of when's the next race, that we often dilute our training because we focus on one thing. And a lot of us are trying to focus on speed and endurance at the same time. And it's like, you can certainly do that, but I think sometimes we dilute one or the other. And so, I always like to have a certain period of time where I tell runners, it's like, hey, scale back, take a couple months off. It's usually at the end of the year, when the race season kind of wraps up in the fall and you're going into the holidays. It's a great time to kind of just step back, get a little bit of a mental and physical break. But then we were in the middle of kicking off for the spring, summer, which is that's my busiest time. And all of a sudden it's like everything's getting canceled. And I know for me, I went through a pretty, rough time in terms of like, what's this going to do? I have people that depend on me. I have expenses to pay, whether I have clients or not. But, I have seen a pickup in the last couple of weeks, at least some interest and some more, a couple things, nothing earth shattering by any means, but it is definitely down. I am seeing more people on the running trails. I'm seeing more people who have never been runners now running. And that's an amazing thing, because running has been the last couple of years, at least for race entries, seeing a slight decline after many, many years of growth. And so I think this is an opportunity to revitalize that, bring a lot of new people into running who wouldn't have tried it in the past, because maybe we were caught up in our jobs, or we were caught up in just the day-to-day life. And it's so nice seeing that. I know in the podcast, we're seeing growth in numbers, even though we're seeing the coaching side of it going down. I think people are just being a little more conservative with where they're spending. I mean, coaching's not a necessity, right? It's a nice to have. And when you're comparing that with all the people who lost jobs and just the tough things that people are having to go through right now, or just the uncertainty is making people hold back. I know, we don't want to, we want to be smart with our money right now.
Absolutely.
And I think that's certainly a valid reason. And so,
please talk a little bit about how that cross-training, strength training benefits you as a runner.
Yeah, so I'd always put running over my strength training, and it's only, even as a coach, I tended to write more training plans that were focused on running. In the last few years, I've really taken a completely almost an opposite. I almost train strength first.
Okay.
And then I train the running. And so I kind of have this philosophy that we train to run. And so I had to eat my own dog food. I was giving out training plans and encouraging people to strength train. And yet I was always putting running first, and strength training was kind of a low priority. It was a thing that I got to when I had time. And I just never had time, or I was using this, and I noticed it was really impacting me. And so I ended up joining a local, it was called Shred 415. I don't know if they're around, but it's 4 15-minute sections. It's 15 minutes on a treadmill, doing sprints and hills and short bursts, 2 to 3 minute bursts. If you think like 400, 800 meter type track work, that's kind of what it is on a treadmill. And then it's 15 minutes on the floor doing total body workouts and 30 to 40 second bursts. A lot of balance, a lot of ab core, jumps, hops, squat, lunges, with light weights, dumbbells, and then it's 15 minutes back on the treadmill, and then it's 15 minutes back on the floor. And so it's exhausting. At the same time, it has been the most amazing thing. And I commit to it religiously, because I had to schedule it, which is the reason I did it, because it's like, this is a place where they only have so many spaces. And so you schedule it. And that's what I needed, was that accountability. Even though I knew all along, it was important for me. But it has made, in my personal life, it's made me stronger. I feel much younger than I am in some ways. I don't have nearly the aches and pains that I was having. Now COVID has killed that. And they just now opened the gym back up.
Okay.
So the gym did close for 2 months, and however, we were able to do it through Zoom, and we were able to. Oh, that's great. So they went in, and so they let us take home the dumbbells. We would Zoom in, and I couldn't do it live because they did it like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So, because I don't even get to bed sometimes till 1. So I was like, but they had the replays. And so I was able to watch the replays at any time that I could do. And so I've been able to keep up with it. And I'm waiting another week or two before I actually go back in the gym, because I want to see, at least in our area, if we see a resurgence with everything opening back up. Yeah, something about being in a smallish kind of room gym with a bunch of sweaty people breathing hard kind of makes me a little nervous at my age.
I don't blame you. We're the same age, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
I have a wife, and family members that are kind of high risk, so I'm trying not to bring anything back in the house. I'm not really so much worried for me. I'm just worried that, I don't want to be the cause for someone else getting sick. So we'll see how it plays out. I think in a few weeks we'll know more.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's great to know that you're still at it, and it was great. Yeah. It's great to know that they found an alternative way of continuing that training for everyone.
Yeah, and everybody I train, 100% of them that I train are doing strength training. It's not even an option. It's because I'm not only seeing people get faster, I'm seeing less injuries. I have people come to me who always struggle with injuries, and we put them on strength training routines, and it takes a few months for them to build that strength up, but they're healthy and they're running. And I have people who've never been told that they can never run before and or run again. And it's like, well, let's try strength training. Let's try some of the things. And again, it's, it takes time to build that strength up, but it's amazing. They can run farther and be less fatigued because their muscles, a strong muscle is a fatigue resistant muscle. And so it's amazing. It's, and I didn't realize how much, right? Because for so long, I just ran. Like I knew it was important, but I'm like, man, I hate lifting heavy things. It's hard. It's like I don't want, but then I got into this particular group of people, and it's like a family, and we get to see the same people, and the trainers are amazing, and that's what I needed. I needed that accountability because we often hear it's like, well, you're a coach, you should just be able to do this stuff. I'm like, no, I'm a person. I had the same struggles. I struggle with nutrition. I struggle with the strength training. Now I love it, and I always loved the running. It's just now it's like, okay, now the last little piece I got to tweak the nutrition. And so I'm better, but I go up and down. I go in phases. And so
I'll tell you, that's where my struggles are. I don't want to go off into my story on your interview, but that's, to say the least, that's I can go out and knock out huge mileage weeks. And at the end of that week, I'll still be like, well, I haven't lost any weight, but it's because I'm coming home and, not watching my diet particularly well.
Yeah.
But okay, let me take this as an opportunity to jump more into the coaching side of things. What really got you motivated? What got you interested in becoming a running coach?
Oh, wow. I woke up one day. No, I was running with a running club. I was doing, and then it was so big. It was such a large club that I decided, you know what, I just want to kind of step away for a while, do my own thing. And after a few months, I kind of missed it. And I just put out a little note on the local Facebook groups at the time, or the local posts. I made it even Craigslist. And I just said, hey, I'm interested in just finding some running partners who wanted to meet up. And it turned into like a little club, and it kind of grew from there. And then as we all kind of caught the bug to decide to turn it into a running club, we realized very quickly that to attract people, you needed to offer training programs. And so that's when I decided that I was just going to go get certification, because it was really about just growing the club. And it was also about the fact that I wanted to be able to lead the club and be able to provide the training and stuff in the right way. And so I went to get certified, came back, was coaching the club for a little while. And then I started getting people reaching out and say, hey, would you help me with this? Or would you help me with that? And around that same time, I was kind of blogging on my own. I had a marathon training podcast actually before the RunBuzz podcast. And it was really just me documenting my story, my process. That's back before anybody knew what a podcast was. And at around the time, I was like, you know what, maybe I should take this online, because I was enjoying it. It was a hobby. I love coaching and mentoring people. I do that in my full-time job. I changed my career to do that, actually. And so I just thought, here's an opportunity to take a hobby and turn it into something. And it turned into an online thing. And it started off just doing training plans. And that was one of the early mistakes I made with as a running coach, is that I put all the emphasis on the training plan, and I put all the emphasis on the science. And I tried to explain to people, oh, well, if you want to write the perfect intensity of a tempo run, you got to do, this. And I realized that most people don't care. Like, most people want a result. Most people want encouragement. Most people want to know guidance, like when to do this and when not to do this, when to take a rest day. Should I run on this day? What happens if I get sick? Do I go back to my training? And what I found is that in the beginning, I was just writing training plans, and I started like, oh, I'll do a custom training plan for, X amount of money. And then I realized that people will either follow the training plan or people won't follow it at all. And I found that I had people coming back and they're like, well, because I'd just write the training plan, give them a custom training plan and say, oh, here you go. And then that wasn't really coaching. That was just somebody writing training plans. And I realized, and you can get that stuff online. Like, they're everywhere, right? And that's actually the biggest thing that hurts running coaches, is because everybody thinks the training plan is it. But it's not it. And as I got into starting to coach people, I quickly learned that that's not what people are struggling with. People are struggling with just getting out the door. People are struggling with getting what plan is right for them, because everything's individualized, right? It's like you respond a different way than somebody else. And while there's a lot of similarities, people jump into the wrong plan because they want to run a certain time, or they want to run a certain distance, and they might not be ready for it. And it was just over a several year period, as I started to kind of sit back and look. First of all, I got so much satisfaction out of like watching people accomplish something and feeling like I had a small part in that, right? Because I feel like my best running days at that point were behind me. And in a lot of ways, I was kind of like, I was just excited. My very first person I coached, who was part of my running club, I volunteered for her first race at the Columbus Marathon. It was the 1 year that I didn't run it. And I got to hand her medal. And it was one of the most highlights of my time. I think the only time I've been most excited was my very first marathon, when my daughter jumped over the fence and ran the last 100 yards. And because I was so emotional from running the marathon, that and then there's my daughter, who was the same daughter who was the reason I got into running. And so it was kind of like, that was kind of cool. That's back when they used to let people do that, before the unfortunate cases in Boston where they lock everything down now. But,
I'm glad you got to experience that scene.
I got to,
awesome.
I guess got addicted to like helping people. And it was so fun, because it was like, it wasn't work. It wasn't anything like that. It was just, I was just sharing my experience. I wasn't, necessarily doing anything special. And then, so it turned into, the first thing was, then I thought, well, the next thing is, maybe people just want to get faster, because everybody wants to get faster. So I created a program around just training people for speed. And that was very successful, except that I was getting other people saying, oh, well, what about me? Like, I just want to complete a half marathon, or I just want to complete a 5K, or I just want to do this. And so that eventually evolved into what the program is today. But I learned that there's really 4 areas. There's 4 key areas that we have to focus on. There's training, right? And there's the strength training side of it. There's mindset and nutrition. And if you don't eat right, you're not going to feel like running, and you're not going to have the energy. You're not going to, all the things that, if you don't eat right, we all know what happens, right? But if you don't have the mindset either, then you're not going to get, if you don't have the willpower, you don't have the ability to get up and turn your alarm clock in the morning. And it's hard. It's not something you can just say, hey, here's a tip, you got to do this, and people do it. Like, it takes a lot of work to change mindset. And if you don't have the mindset, you're not going to run right. And if you're not doing the training, then obviously, that's not going to work either. So
you're just going to end up.
What I really found out was it's not the training plan. The training plan is good. It's a needed part of your overall training, but it's the other things that are the differentiators. If you're just following a training plan and you're not doing it and working on the other areas, you're not working on strength training, or you're not working on mindset, or you're not working on your nutrition, you're not optimizing your performance. And it wasn't until I started really sitting, and I did a lot of this kind of soul searching when I was off for 18 months. And I just started thinking, like, I started doing a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of working with people, because I couldn't run. So I was at the running club every single Saturday morning, whether I could run or not, for 4 or 5 hours, and I had a lot of time. And so I just poured myself into it, learning as much as I can, a lot of books on psychology, sports psychology. I was interviewing a lot of people through the podcast as that was taking off, and just realizing that the best way to help people is figure out what's unique to them, what's motivating for them, and build on that, and not necessarily what training plan is. Is Hal Higdon better than Hansen's? Is Hansen's better than mine? Is mine better than anybody else? Exactly. It doesn't matter. Like, to create an adaptation in your body, you have to work it, and you have to actually with recovery. And so if you can balance the level of effort with recovery, all fundamental training plans work to one degree or another. The trick is finding the one that works for you at the right level of balance of effort and recovery. And that changes with age, that changes with your fitness background, that changes with your level of experience. There's no right or wrong plan. And so that was the idea, was once I realized that, and then once I realized that fueling and hydration and making sure that you're eating and timing your foods at the right time, that you're eating the right macronutrients for recovery and the right ones that are energy bearing, and not going off the world into these crazy, different diets and all these different things, that's overcomplicating life. They have their places, they work for some people, that's awesome. But if we stay simple, if we stay with the basics, most people aren't doing the basics correct. I'm not doing the basics correct most of the time.
I think that's a very rare case for anyone, even the elites.
Yeah. And so if we do the basic things to the best of our ability, if we train to the best of our ability, if we strength train to the best of our ability, it doesn't have to be perfect. It will never be perfect. If we eat the right things when we can, but still enjoy life. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's all this balance and stuff that comes in. And when you're in a hard training cycle, maybe you dial in a little bit harder on some of these things. And then when you're not in a hard training cycle, you back off and enjoy things. And so I found this by getting to know the people I work with and understanding like how, what makes them tick. How do they respond? Are they somebody who responds to high mileage? I've given high mileage to people and they fall apart. I've given high mileage to other people and they improve rapidly and massively. I've applied strides to somebody just as a workout, and all of a sudden they're taking a minute off their mile time, and I'm going, whoa, hey, they might have something here, right? And then you do the same thing to another person, and it's like, they get they get a little bit of benefit out of it. And so the good news is as I've done this longer and longer, I start seeing these patterns. And I've come down with a process that is less about the training plan, but it's more about making the manipulations and changes from week to week. And again, it's always about balancing recovery, because we always think about the tempo run as our hard workout, right? Or track workouts, right? It's actually the day after that's the most important, that rest day. Because if you go back out and run that next day, you're actually preventing your body from recovering and making the physical adaptation by healing the muscles, making the muscles stronger, making aerobic capacity a little bit better. You're sabotaging that. And that's why I've actually sped people up by cutting their number of runs out per week. I've sped people up by slowing their pace down. And it's counterintuitive until you kind of sit down and explain, okay, here's why, right? It's not that the tempo runs are bad. It's not that speed workouts are bad. They're awesome. But you just have to know how to work it with other things. And so most people, we pick up the latest World of Runner's World magazine, or we read a blog article, and there's some new workout in it, or some new shoe comes on the market, and we think our shoe's going to fix our problem, and we gravitate to it. And I'm going, you're missing the point.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure.
Because, Steve, just to interrupt you just for a moment here, you just launched an epiphany for me, something that I've been thinking about for months. You just crystallized it in my head. So, I mean, it's funny because that's what I've been trying to figure out in the last little while is how come I'm doing better in the last 2 months? I'm hitting times that when I was training really hard, just pushing like crazy, like stupid numbers. And it was so hard for me to get there. Like I was hitting them, but barely. And I feel like crap for, days afterwards. But I've been pulling back just a little, giving myself rest in between, I guess. A little more rest in between. And I'm still maintaining with less work. It's just a little bit, I'm doing it a little bit smarter. And now I'm understanding why.
Yeah, I've trained Boston qualifiers on 3 or 4 days a week.
It's amazing.
And it's not the whole less is more thing. It's just being smarter about mixing. We're not running the same pace all the time, that we're peaking our miles at a certain time, that we're not focusing speed work early. We can wait till towards the end to focus on speed work, because speed develops really quick when you have that aerobic capacity built in. But when you're trying to do everything, you can dilute everything at the same time. But it's also, again, there's so many factors. It's so unique. It's so individual. Age is a factor. Somebody's fitness levels, in fact, if you've been, at a certain point, if you just keep going and keep going and keep going, your return of investment, or you'll start seeing the results kind of start to taper off, because you can only go so far, right? You can only peak so much. But a brand new runner, you can do about anything and they're going to improve, right? I mean, I was a perfect walking example of that. I just went out and could I run one more mailbox? Could I run one more mailbox? And 6 months later, I could run 5 miles and a half marathon. And I went to a marathon in a year. And it was all about running one more mailbox.
Yeah.
And that was without coaching. So, so I think when I got into coaching, I really just enjoyed the human aspect, getting to know the clients. It's kind of like solving a Rubik's Cube. There's a challenge there, right? you're only as good as the results you can get somebody. And, and there are people who come along and you're like, man, you try everything and you can't break that Rubik's Cube. And then, you might reach out to another coach and say, hey, I got this client, like I'm really struggling with this particular client. And they'll be like, well, have you tried this? And I'm going, I have not. You go back and try it and you find out it's like, and it's interesting. It's it's fun. It's watching and getting a letter from somebody who, was able to do something they didn't think was possible, or getting an email, getting a phone call after a race and somebody's in tears saying, I did something and I just want to thank you. And I'm like, I didn't do it. You did all hard work. The podcast is another example. Like I do all that for free. There's 140 episodes, 145 hours of stuff. And I had no idea. I just did it for fun. I just did it to share. And it was interesting. 2 years ago, I got an email from somebody who said that they were listening to a podcast one day and they were going to kill themselves. And,
wow.
And I was flabbergasted. I thought, okay, is this a joke? Is somebody like just playing with me? And it goes back to that. You never know who you're influencing. That could be you out running along the side of the road and somebody decides to make a life change because maybe they, had something and they go out and they start exercising and you maybe saved them from, developing cancer long-term or having a heart attack and you just never know. And what was interesting about that scenario is I was seriously at the time considering giving it up because I wasn't seeing any return of investment in my coaching business. I was struggling. And that's what ultimately turned it around to say, you know what, I'm going to change up how I do things. And I don't focus on the money. I've never made a dime from my business. I just invest it right back in because I have a full-time job. I don't need it. Will I use it sometime in the future? Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I want to retire from my full-time job and do this full-time, but this is not the career to do that. And it's, to me, it's more about building and reaching more runners. And just at the end of my days, I'll look back and go, man, this has been so much fun. Like,
absolutely.
It's not a job. It's why I work on it every night, every weekend. It's just, it's not a job. It's fun. And
yeah, I mean, exactly. That's my motivation behind this, rinky-dink little YouTube channel of mine. I mean, I started it out 3 or 4 months ago. Just exactly. I mean, there's no hope of money in this. I'm doing it purely because of that sheer joy of, even in the smallest little way, helping somebody and getting that communication that says, thank you, I just learned something from you, and my life is just that little bit better because of it. It's just,
and for anybody listening and watching this, like these videos on YouTube and subscribe to the channels because it's I'm a podcaster. It's a very silent thing. You're always recording. You don't know who's listening sometimes, and you wonder if anybody's listening. And when you get that little email, I mean, every single week I feel like quitting. Like I just do. Like I don't like. Who wants to hear? I know, but I'm like, but it's our own. We're our own worst enemy. When we run, we're our own worst enemy. Our mind games we're always fighting. Like, man, I want to quit running, or I want to do this, or I'd rather just watch Netflix, or I'd rather do whatever. We're our own worst enemy, and that carries in every aspect of our life. And if we can work on those, right? All we need is that little bit of feedback from somebody and say, you know what, I really enjoyed that episode. That fuels me up, right? Getting a thing on iTunes, a simple little 5-star review on iTunes means absolutely nothing in the overall world of things. But I look back and I'm going, yeah, all right. Like, it gives you just enough juice.
You up to go back and do it again.
Yeah. And so, for starting a YouTube channel, I'm in awe at you in this because the part of it is like, I've tried to do the video thing. Like I can do a video thing if I'm talking to you, but if I have to stand up in front of a video, I go, Well,
I still do, I'm sure everybody who's watching.
But you're past that. You'll get better. And I actually have I'm building a screen and a studio thing over here, and I'm forcing myself to start doing more live streams because I'm never going to get better if I don't work at it. We're never going to get better at running if we don't work at it. You can want to get faster all day long. If you don't work at it, you're not going to. And so,
exactly. And let me just take that as a jumping off point because, we've done a lot of talking about your coaching. We've done a little bit of talking about your motivations behind the podcast and the wonderful feedback that we get and just how it keeps us motivated as content creators. But tell me a little bit about even the RunBuzz Facebook community as a supplement, I guess, to the coaching business. What was really, you can talk about the motivation for that as well, but like, how does it all play together? Yeah, I'm going to hold back on what I suspect, but
yeah.
Talk
So I created the Facebook group for an accountability for myself. To be honest,
okay.
I am a world's biggest procrastinator. I stay busy all the time, but I tend to have, my vision tends to be bigger than my ability to get things done. And so, I have ideas of where I want to take this business in the future that are way beyond anything that I can personally do myself. And so I created the Facebook group as really an accountability group to have discussions around the things that we were talking, to learn from people in the community myself, because I've learned there's tremendous great people in there. Many of them who I've become good friends with, some who have traveled from Australia, from Connecticut to Columbus, Ohio, to hang out on a race, because we've done a destination race. I had somebody from Washington State fly in for that cherry blossom race. And that's not something that's normal. So, I wanted to create an environment where you had the podcast. Okay. So that's how this all originated. It started with a podcast. It didn't start with coaching. It started with a podcast. I was doing coaching at the side, but I wasn't really doing online. I started with a podcast, and I wanted a place where it's like, man, like, I was not part of a running club at the time, except for I was starting the one I was in. And I was like, what about all these people who live in a world that doesn't have a running club locally? What about the people who live in rural areas or whatever? And I wanted a place where, like, you could get on Facebook and post things, marathon runners. And, we like to talk about our races, right? How do you know you're a marathon runner? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Exactly.
So I wanted a place where, like, I could have conversations about running with people and not annoy my 95% of my other friends who had nothing to do with running. And then as it grows, it was an idea for, I just want to be part of a group. And I didn't want to be, I'm not the leader of the group. I don't want to be the leader of the group. In fact, I've kind of step back sometimes. The group's big enough now, it kind of manages. I just jump in every now and then and have to kick somebody out who's being an idiot. But, it's really about letting those discussions happen. And yeah, I mean, to me, it's another extension of social media. It's a very safe place. We don't put up with anybody in the group who is condescending towards another runner. They're the first ones to go. If somebody tries to contact a person outside of the group through private messaging, that person's gone, because we want it to be a safe place where people can come and talk. And so that was the idea, the genesis around the group, was really to just, the running community is awesome. I love the local community. It's great. But, at 8 o'clock at night 9 o'clock at night on a Thursday night, who am I going to talk to? The running club's not till Saturday morning, right? So that was the genesis of the group. And I think the other idea is we had the podcast, which is a very asynchronous type of listening, right? You go on a run, you put your headphones in, you listen to a podcast, or when you're driving to work. At the time, there really wasn't. Facebook groups were just starting to take off. And I'm like, what if we had a community, right? Yeah. What if we had a community that was built around this podcast? And that's really the differentiator. Was there, now everybody has communities, I think now.
You're at the forefront.
They're a thing. It wasn't my idea, but I was one of the few at the time who was doing it and podcasting. But there was a couple other groups out there. And the cool thing is, it's such a small, running community is huge, but at the same time, it's kind of small. And so a lot of my friends are podcasters now, doing running podcasts, and I've helped people start podcasts. And it's cool because they just call me up. It's like, hey, how did you do this? And I tell them, and then next thing you know, it's like, hey, I launched a podcast. Oh, cool. Awesome. More the merrier. I love it. Like, I listen to all as much as I can listen to.
I really have to commend you for it, because, I've been in and out of the RunBuzz Facebook community for probably 3 years now. Sometimes I'm way more, I participate far more, than at other times, but I'm always in there. And it's just such a, you're I don't want to call it policing, but keeping the walls up to make sure that it's only the right-minded kind of people in there. I think it's really paid off. It's really,
we'll have
such
discussions.
a positive place.
We'll have discussions, but it has to stay positive. I just don't.
Absolutely, and it always is. I've never seen any of the ugly side that maybe you alluded to earlier. I think you've done a great job there.
Yeah, well, thanks. And a lot of it has to do with the other people in the community. You know, I get text messages when somebody goes in there and tries to spam the group. Somebody, hey, you know, you got spam in there. I'm like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
it's like, you can only buy so many sunglasses.
Yeah, I've fallen for that one too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's I'm really happy. I think the most thing I look back, the most thing I'm proud of is that group. It's just such a great group of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are times when I'll feel a little bit down. Maybe one day I go in there, talk to a couple of people, and I'm ready to go again. So, you know.
Yeah.
It's
I hope
really
it stays
cool.
that way. My always fear is when things get bigger, they get harder to manage. And so, you know, we'll do our best to keep it that way as long as we can.
Yeah. Well, so far so good. I mean, so far so great.
Yeah, thanks.
Let me ask you this, because I'm listening to the podcast, etc. I've become aware of you expanding the RunBuzz team. You've got a team of specialists in there who are just, their credentials and their personalities are just stellar. And just talk a little bit about why they were hired, why you expanded that team, and just expound upon the extra capabilities that RunBuzz has now as a result of them being on board.
Yeah, part of it, there's several reasons. One is, it goes back to my idea that I'm only one person. I can only, you know, answer so many emails per day. I do read every single email I get. I receive everything, and I watch every post that's in that group. But one of the things I quickly realized is we were expanding, and I had people coming. We use a membership based system. So, you know, we have the one-on-one coaching, and then we have more of a self-paced kind of coaching. And the idea is, you know, I'm not an expert in nutrition, right? I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not an exercise physiologist. And, you know, I'm a running coach. I have my running coach credentials, lots of experience, but that's outside my scope of practice. Those two areas are outside my scope of practice. And so when I realized that, about the time I realized that, well, nutrition's a pillar, the strength training's a pillar, the you know, the mindset's a pillar. I don't have a sports psychologist yet, but and I don't have a physical therapist. I'm waiting for I am working very closely with Dwayne Scotty over at the Healthy Runner podcast. I refer a lot of people to him from a telemedicine perspective. He can do telemedicine in most cases. And so this idea of creating experts in those key areas, injury prevention, and strength training. And so, and then obviously I hired a couple of running coaches. Now, I didn't hire them. They're not full-time employees. They're affiliated with me. And they bring their clients, and sometimes we have clients that we assign to them if I can't coach them and things like that. But we're a small network, we're a small team. We focus on providing kind of that expertise in those four areas. I think that's an area that most run coaches can't do. You know, run coaches are really there to help you with running. Unless they're, you know, a certified fitness trainer, or unless they're a registered dietitian, they should not be giving nutrition advice. They should not be giving you strength training advice. We can do some basic things. I can talk about basic nutrition, things that are like, oh, here's our government plate, you know, how much, you know, meat and potatoes or whatever. Like, I can do anything that is common knowledge that you would have, anybody else would have, right, without training. But I'm not a nutritionist. I can't treat people for nutrition deficiencies. Neither can personal trainers. Personal trainers can, again, talk very basic. And I think there's a lot of people in this space, in the fitness space particularly, where they're overstepping their bounds. And so I noticed that as I was starting to get into strength training more, I was kind of like, I don't know if this is a gray area for me, right? Because it's like, I can point you to some YouTube videos and let somebody else teach you, or I can go get somebody that's an expert and bring them on the team. And I pay out of my personal pocket for that person to come in and help us build custom strength training. You know, it doesn't come out of the other coaching thing. It's like, to me, it's that important. And so I wanted to build something that covered those main areas, because when I did that, I started noticing better results. And that ultimately, at the end of the day, is what I want to be known for, right? We're not perfect. We have a long way to go. We have marketing issues because, first of all, RunBuzz is kind of a dumb name for a coaching business. I don't like it.
I don't agree.
It's great for a podcast. Right? It's great for a podcast. It's great for community. There's the whole running, the buzzing. It's got the little play of the word of the runner's high, but that's what it was created for, right? And so we have Pacebuilders. Pacebuilders is the coaching program, and Pacebuilders is the brand around the coach program. We do have some things coming that is going to maybe go outside of what you guys have seen, but I can't get too much into it, but it'll be more of a business to business model. It'll also be more of a model of working. I'm working with some, trying to come up with a very early stage, talking about with some bigger races of maybe offering training for people who are in those races.
That's wonderful.
But that's a long shot.
Okay.
So I'm crossing my fingers. I hope I didn't jinx it by saying it. But there's a book coming.
Wow.
That I've been working on this whole idea of stop, own, commit, the mantra, the mindset. So if I ever get time to finish it, that's my goal in life. If I accomplish nothing in the next 5 years, I want to get that thing out. It's been in my head for a while. I've talked about it on the podcast a number of times. And I think it's just time, but I can't scale me. So I have to rely on a team. I have an awesome team of people that any one of them I would trust to handle my personal clients. And so I'm coaching a few, clients. And then, it's the idea is that as the business continues to scale, hopefully, again, COVID has killed it, set me back. Yeah. I mean, but we're getting in kind of late into the year. So if it doesn't turn around, it's not going to be till next spring. And so that's a little bit depressing because like I said, I got 2 kids in college and we like to eat dinner and there is expenses whether I have clients or not. So, but yeah, that's the vision, is to be able to provide scale. And what's nice about that is when we have the videos and we have the progressions, we don't just give you exercises and say, hey, go do this type of exercise. I mean, we focus on running specific exercises and we have different progressions. So you work through a progression. And you don't just keep doing the same exercise every time. Every couple months we send out a new new progression. And but we also do the live monthly things where somebody can come in. All our clients get together once a month, and all our coaches are there. And our our dietitian's there, and on most of the calls, and it's like you have a dietitian question, you get access to that, and that's part of what we're charging for, and what a normal person would charge for coaching. You're getting access to those experts. You're not in their office, right? They're not making you meal plans. But if you want to know how to fuel better, or you're fueling, your stomach's getting irritated, there's some things that they can help you with. And that's really the value add that the vision I had was, I'm one person, I'm not an expert in everything. I'm going to refer to, when it's sports injuries, guess what? I'm going to work with a physical therapist. The best person to work with is a physical therapist, and not internet advice. Right? Nothing irks me more than when I see, hey, I have this problem on my knee and it might be this. And then you say, oh, well, have you tried this? And it might be this and it might be this. I'm like, you guys don't know. And it's natural. I get it. I do it too, because it's like sometimes I go, oh, I know what it is, or I kind of
exactly.
think I know this,
that's what people are looking for. They're looking for like a nice, easy way to get, a convenient way to get all their information in one place. And what I love about what you've done in the last, I don't know exactly how long it's been, but I kind of woke up to the way you're expanding RunBuzz with all these different specialists, say a year ago, and it's great for exactly that reason, because it gives you a one-stop shop to get not just advice that may be a little iffy, like you were saying, but you're getting it from somebody who's a specialist, somebody who's going to give you sound, safe advice, and that's wonderful.
When we have programs as low as $35 a month, and it's like you have access to those people for an hour once a month, plus you get access to the videos and the training plans, or any distance. Like, that should be a no-brainer.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet at the same time, it's like the biggest resistance I get back is like, well, there's an app. I can get that on an app, or I can get that on YouTube. I'm like, but
no, you can't.
You're getting a generic plan, which I get a lot of people, that might be enough. Honestly, like I'm not saying everybody needs a coach. And I am biased. So, but you're going to get, you're not going to get the same level of stuff. And I'm a coach and I want people to get better through constructive feedback. Right. And so I crave my clients. Like I ask them, like, please tell me how I can help you better. I need that feedback. I need that feedback. And you need that feedback in terms of like, do they like your videos? Do they not like your videos? What topics you want to cover? Right. And I think that's the biggest thing is I'd like to see is just to be able to reach more people and provide an opportunity. But
exactly, I think you just hit on the main thing there, is just kind of getting it out in front of more ears, more eyeballs.
Yeah,
and,
but there is that perception we're going to always be fighting against. Is I can just go download Hal Higdon's plan, and there's nothing wrong with Hal Higdon's plan. It's a good plan, but I'm just going like, but that's only that part of it.
Exactly. It's one small piece of the puzzle. And sometimes it takes people, if you get out there and you try to train yourself for maybe 2-3 months, I think the people who don't drop off, the people who are actually going to stick with running, it doesn't take long to dawn on you as a new runner that, if you're going to last more than just like 3-6 months, you need help. You need to start thinking in bigger terms. And I think that's where services like RunBuzz really come in.
Yeah, the injuries is what's getting people. Usually about 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 9 weeks on a new runner. You can almost predict that's when the overuse injuries are going to set in, because that's when your fitness level starts getting good, because you've been working now for 6 9, and all of a sudden, but yet your muscles and tendons and joints stuff haven't adapted. And so I can almost predict, with a new runner comes to me and says, "I never run before," because everybody thinks we work with like high level athletes or real talent athletes. I know the vast majority of the runners are just everyday normal people who just want to run a 5K or run their first half. And the biggest thing is trying to prevent them from hurting themselves. Because everybody wants to, oh, well, you just got shin splints, just run through them, or like I got plantar fasciitis and I need to stop for 6 months. Well, if you have plantar fasciitis and you stop running for 6 months, you come back on the first day of running back, your plantar fasciitis is still going to be there. There are lots of injuries you can continue to run. You just have to manage and cut back the volume and do some other things. The strength work and the flexibility, the mobility work. We can do all those things and really keep people running. And that's probably then the coolest thing. And that's been the biggest thing I've learned in the last 3 to 4 years and that's the reason why I go back to the strength training. That's the key. And when I first came on, it's like everybody's talking about strength training. It must be, it's like, okay, this is the new thing in running. It's kind of like every time Nike comes out with a new Vaporfly shoe, right? Oh, that's the big thing in the market. I'm like, you know what? Put an elite athlete in a pair of New Balance white dad shoes. I guarantee the son of gun's going to outrun you. Right? Now, does those shoes help? Yeah. But are they the end all be all? No.
Of course not. Yeah.
It doesn't help you if you're injured. It doesn't help you if you don't have the mindset. It doesn't help you if you're eating poorly. Those things have to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you basically summed it up. What you're calling your 4 pillars, and the way you're attacking it. I just want to wish you the best of luck with pushing that out there, because that's the solid knowledge. That's the wisdom that's going to help people. And I wanted you here so badly because even on the free side of RunBuzz, what you've done for the community in general is so helpful, and it's kept me so motivated. And literally, without you knowing it, you've helped me to PR at least 3 times, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not no hyperbole there. Your positive attitude, your incredible knowledge is what's caused me, what's enabled me to get to where I want to be and to continue to push, even at my late age. So I really want to just kind of encourage people to become active parts of the Facebook community, to hire you on. They'll only see incredible.
Well, even if you don't, come over and we'll get to know each other, and certainly there's tons and tons of free assets for people. I think one thing I would just encourage people to do is be a student of the sport. And that doesn't mean you have to go read every single book. You know, running books, there's two types. There's the kind that tell the stories and make you feel good, and those are great for reading, you know, just to kind of de-stress. And then there's these other ones that are like, oh, it's like reading an anatomy book, and I just rather not, right? And I have a hard time. Like when I sit down, as much as I love running and as much as I study running, I can only read like maybe 5 pages at a time, and then I'm going, I got to put this away, right?
I know exactly the books you're talking about.
But
the
the interesting
famous
thing
books
is,
that are kind of dry.
what I learned was when I got certified in coaching, I barely knew anything coming out of the coaching class. It's really the minimum standard to be a certified coach. It's the minimum standard to just show some basics to provide. And really the certifications came out to provide people who could teach kids in track. That's the USA track and field. Now, obviously they have more elite levels for you know, professional runners and college runners, and then there's the RRCA, and the RRCA is a great course. It's my favorite one actually. But it's a weekend, right? It's like you can only learn so much in a weekend. It's really to provide a common lowest barrier of some level of competency, right? It wasn't until it took me 2 or 3 years of really just figuring it out with clients and just constantly studying. And so if you don't want to run and coach, you can learn everything there is to know, but you've got to just take your time. Listen to the podcasts, not just mine, anyone, right? Listen to other runners, listen to, you know, anything that you can get your hands on, read, you know, study the sport. The advantage that I have now is that I've coached enough people now, I have little guinea pigs. You know, and it's like I've been able to, like, you know, and I've been able to see things and test things, and it's one thing to test it on yourself, but you're just one kind of. I can test it now on a lot of different people, and it's not testing. That's kind of I'm being kind of funny, but I learned more by actually doing the coaching than I actually ever got from any certification. You don't have to have a certification to be a running coach. You have to have where a good running coach comes in is in the experience. It's not in the book knowledge. I can tell you how fast you should run this workout or how hard you should work this workout. That's only a small piece of the puzzle. And so anybody who wants to get faster, you got to study the sport. And again, that's all. And again, I don't like to push the performance, because only 40% of my clients even care about performance. They care about not getting injured.
Which is
they want to run a half or a full, and they've had issues in the past. It seems like every time I get to 15 miles a week, I start getting tendonitis in my knee, and I'm like, okay, let's look at your training. There's things that we can do there. Let's look at your nutrition. Let's make sure you're drinking enough water. All those things that impact injury. Let's make sure you're sleeping enough. Make sure we're not, and then it's like, oh, okay. And I, and I've never been a high performance runner. I've never been the fastest runner. I don't have great times. And I'm cool with that. And I kind of liken it to the fact is, if you look at college football coaches, if you look at NFL football coaches, I'm pretty sure none of them, there's some great athletes that were great athletes in their time. I was an athlete and I was in the military. I've been around sports my whole life. I've been in a part of the community for a number of years. And so it was really just observation and learning. And then I've been fortunate to have just multiple Boston qualifiers that I could never qualify their times, and so
that's the thing. I think being a coach is being a better observer and a better student of what's necessary and what a particular runner is capable of, and not pushing them too hard.
In a lot of ways, you're a counselor. In a lot of ways, you're an accountability partner. A lot of times you're a sounding board for somebody's frustrations. And sometimes, again, coaching is less about telling somebody what to do. It's more about just guiding them and maybe putting up some guardrails in some cases and giving people some opportunities. Like, we all have our blind spots. I have lots of blind spots. I get told that all the time by my wife and kids. It's like, you do this? Like, no. Okay. But there's so many different advantages that come with it, and everyone's different, and everybody has a different need out of it. And so to me, it's not a one size fits all. It's get to know, Paul. It's like, get to know you. What's your background? Why do you even want to run this, get PR? Why do you even want to get faster? Like, what are you trying to get out of it? and a lot of times it's us trying to satisfy our own internal competition. And other times we find out it's because your buddy over there is running faster than you and you want to be a part of their pace group, or I just want to run because, you know, I want to feel what it feels like to cross a marathon finish line. Right.
Exactly.
And there's so many reasons why. And that's the thing I get out of it is every person, every runner has a story. Every runner can motivate, again, people. I don't care who you are. Some of the biggest motivators in my life have been people who have only run a mile, who have only run a 5K. And I find that they're more, you know, every bit, and if not more of a runner than some of the people who just, it comes naturally because of the things they overcome. I say, if you ever struggle with motivation, go watch the end of a marathon. Stay until the very last runner crosses the finish line. It's awesome that people can be in the front because they worked hard. But it is something about watching people come at the end and they, you know, just what it took for them to even get to that point.
Exactly. The strength of spirit that it takes those people.
You know, it's kind of that whole spirit. I wish we had more of that in the country right now. You know, I think it'd be a different place, but that's, you know, that fires me up. I go watch races when I have runners run, or if I finish a race, and often I'm usually just too tired to get in the car. Let's be honest here. Like, you know, my car's parked a half a mile away and I just want to rest. But no, really, you know, I will stay and watch till the end because I think the persons that come at the end should have the same race experience. It's so sad to come and watch people that come at the end of the race and everything's packed up and gone. I think that's just horrible. Yep. Now I know why, because the race is paying for people. They have a permit that has to get them off the course at a certain time, or they can get fined for that. And so, but I think, you know, it's cool to be able to just see that. To me, it's motivating.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. But it's funny because, you know, just along the same lines, there are a few YouTube channels that I subscribe to that are hosted by people who are more or less just, what are they doing? They're documenting their own journey as a runner, like going from zero to whatever their chosen goal is. And there are people, you know, I'm not going to name names, but there are a couple that I'm at front of mind right now that are, you know, they're building towards a marathon, say, and they're running like 14-minute miles. But there's just something about them. There's something so motivating and so inspirational just to watch them. And every week they update their channel, and they just ran their first 14-miler or their first 16-miler. And they're so thrilled and so enthusiastic about the whole process, even though they're in intense pain at the end of those runs.
Yeah.
But they're so motivating because they're really, really after it, you know?
Yeah, I had this last year or so, I've always done this when somebody runs their first race at a particular distance, their first marathon or their first half marathon, I will sit by my phone waiting for the text message.
Yeah,
and I will track them, and then you see the tracking stop because the technology may have slowed down or it hasn't updated yet, and then you start freaking out. Like, I'm nervous now, and I'm running around like I don't know how many times I run around on Sunday morning. My wife's like, "Why are you just like checking the phone?" I'm like, "I got somebody running a race this weekend. Like, you know, I want to know how they did." And it's and I've had like I said, when you finally get that phone call or you get that call, and you're just like, yeah, you know, like this is the best feeling ever. Like, you know,
absolutely.
Like, I don't care if I ever make a dime. That's an adrenaline and that's why, you know, anybody's considering getting into coaching or getting into that thing. It's like, go do it. It's the most rewarding thing. You won't make much money, but it's like, that's the most rewarding thing in the world. And
that's awesome.
And that's what I hope, you know, like I said, you know, I needed that from a community, and just the general running community in general is like, I needed something that I felt like I belonged to. I had other things I've done in my life, but it doesn't have that same feeling. There's something about going out on a run with somebody, doing things where most people going, why is that person running? Like, you know, his car break down? You know, like, you know, why? Right? You know, and I used to be that person. I used to drive by and go, what are these knuckleheads doing out at 5:30 in the morning? I'm on my way to work. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, who? Why? You know, and I wasn't like I was making fun of them, but at the same time, I was just kind of like, who does that? And then, it's weird. Just you wake up one day and you're like, I'm one of those people. And it's just,
Yep. Once you're bitten by
crazy.
that bug and suddenly you get it, it all falls into place.
It's the loud, blaring AC/DC thunderstruck at the front of the line when you're getting ready to toe the line to kick off a race, and you got that energy of the crowd around you. I mean, that's the biggest adrenaline in the world. And if you could bottle that up and sell it, that would just be, there would.
It'd be the best drug out there. I'll tell you.
We would all be addicted, and so that's I guess an end of it is that's why I do it. That's why I got into it. I don't ever claim to be the best coach. I don't ever claim to be the fastest runner. I don't, all I have to do is just guide people who need that help. And that's really, why I like when you do things like that you're doing, and other podcasters are doing what they're doing, and other YouTube channels are doing what they're doing. Is like, we don't have to do this, right? It's like,
exactly.
We do it
because we're getting as much out of it as the people that we're trying to help.
I mean, not to drop names, but I got an opportunity to talk to Ryan Hall.
Wow.
And he was on the podcast. Bart Yassa was on the podcast. Dean Carmichael was on the podcast. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Right now I'm in my basement, right? Who gets to talk to people like that? Like, you might get to run into them at an expo, but I got an hour of their time, and it's like, and to me, I'm like, hey, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And so you get to, and I've just learned so much from having guests on, even, and yourself back when you were on, we get to, every guest, you get some sort of little knowledge out. And so that's been probably the biggest, coolest thing in my own personal running experiences, just being exposed to other runners. But I learned just as much from the person when I'm on a running club and I'm running with a pace group or something, and you're talking and you're learning about the runner you're running next to, and what made them get into running, what made them take that first chance. Because I hear all the time on running club when we have new people, like, oh, I was scared to come out. I didn't want to come out. I'm not a runner. I'm not a real runner. I'm too slow. I'm too heavy. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too whatever. And
it comes up with an excuse.
And I was the same way. I was a nervous wreck when I went to my first running club thing. And I thought, who am I? Like, what? That imposter syndrome, right? Who am I to be here? And then you find out, you get around, you're going, oh, we're all like this.
Exactly.
And there are some, I've been in part of running clubs where there's been some cliques and cliquish where, a certain group didn't want to talk to the other group because they felt that they were too fast or too slow. And that's really sad. But I mean, if you keep looking around, you'll find the right group of people.
Exactly. The right group will find a way to accommodate the entire breadth of the runners that show up.
Yeah. I used to run slower with a couple of people because I didn't want them to run alone. And it actually helped my running because it forced me to slow down my long runs, where I probably was pushing myself too hard. You get unexpected consequences, I guess, or unexpected benefits. Unexpected benefits. Sometimes when you look beyond, running clubs can also push you. And sometimes on those days where you got to do speed work, what better way than to bump up 30 seconds faster into a faster pace group and let them be the fuel that pushes you a little faster on those days you need to run harder. And so then encourage people to look into that, even in your local communities.
Exactly. Now, you just led me perfectly into what is my last sort of running question that I have for you. And that is, what is your favorite general piece of running advice that you just like to just hand out that will work for everyone?
Patience. It's not what everybody wants to hear. Everybody wants to hear, what's the best shoe, what's the best workout. But honestly, it comes down to patience. I think we tend to want to progress faster than we should. I found that it's better to take slow, methodical steps, stay conservative, have a good game plan, and then execute on it. But I think what happens is we get out there and we feel good on a particular day, and we may want to run faster than we should. And again, remember, it's the recovery days that are the most important. And if you feel like you feel fine the next day, you might push harder that second day than you should, even though it's a recovery day. And I think that's the same thing with injuries. Injuries are impacting, depending on which study, 40 to 70% of all runners each year. and studies are all over the board because of what they call an injury. Don't call an injury in the size of groups are studying, but the idea is that injuries are preventable most of the time, unless you do something silly like stand off the side of a curb and twist your ankle or something. Those are, but that's not the normal running injury. The normal running injury is caused because we're systematically, repetitively wearing ourselves down. It's not, the shoes are certainly an aspect of prevention, but they're not the end all be all. The form is certainly an aspect, but it's not the end all be all. There's many people. I always refer to this example, this lady on a local running trail. She runs with her back hunched and her arm like this. Okay. I assume she's had some situation in her life. And I kid you not, she's an ultra runner, and I see her every time I'm on that trail every Saturday for hours, and she's never injured. Right. And she has the absolute worst form. But
it works for her and what her situation.
It works for her because she runs. If you strength train, that's another level of armor, right? Mm-hmm. If you have if you're dealing with removing antioxidants from your body and oxidative stress, which is a natural thing that happens when you break down cells through exercise. If you deal with those things, right, through increasing antioxidants, eating healthy, making sure you're getting enough calcium, making sure you're getting good macros, that you're not cutting out your calories. One of the biggest things we're seeing right now from a nutrition perspective is we're seeing that, and tends to be more in women, but not always. We're seeing, when I brought Jill on from a nutrition perspective, we started analyzing our caloric intakes of people and just having them track just simple MyFitnessPal, just tracking what they ate. We found that 30-40% of our women athletes were drastically under consuming their calories. And over time, that creates your body to break down, which leads you to more cases of injury, right? There's something out there called REDS. You can look it up, but it's basically when you go too long under calories, you can actually cause all kinds of health issues. And just tweaking that. And a lot of it might come down to, well, I want to maintain a weight or I want to lose weight. But we were actually able to increase people's caloric intake and not have them gain weight. And you're like, wait, why does that happen? Well, it has to do with the fact that, your body's going to shut down when you underconsume, and you're going to start conserving things, and your body's not going to work right. There's so many things that go crazy. Well, that's an aspect of injury prevention, right? So it's not always, I always hate the internet. Just go throw a knee brace on. You'll be all right. That's the runner thing, right? That's what we do. Because runners, we tend to be type A. We tend to want to push ourselves. We want to push ourselves through pain. It's that whole no pain, no gain Nike crap that they make you believe, which is a horrible way to train. I always tell people, if you don't enjoy the training, if you're suffering, if you're running, if you're not enjoying running, you're doing it wrong. You're going to have days that are tough. But if you absolutely are a new runner and you're like, man, I don't think I can do this. This sucks. This is I'm sore. I don't want to, then you're doing it wrong. You're doing it too fast. Slow down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been at this, you and I, like I said earlier, we're the same age. But when I started out at 42 or 43 years old, about 9 years ago, I expected to kind of peak out 2-3 years later, be at my best, and then just slowly start declining. And here I am, 51 years old, and I can't believe I'm waiting for the other shoe to hit the floor and for me to finally get where I'm kind of over that hump and I can't PR anymore. But so far, there's absolutely no sign of it. I'm just slowly, patiently still moving in the right direction. And
you know how you can put that to bed really quick? Go look at the finishers in the New York Marathon last year and look at the people and what the times are, and the people in their 70s and 80s who are still running. They are kicking my butt. And I did an episode a while back where I was studying age and the impact of age, because we always hear as you get older, that you do slow down. And there's truth to that. However, most of us don't come anywhere close to our true potential or fitness potential. And you can continue to make improvements for many, many years. Are there aspects of things that do decrease over time, like your VO2 max and things like that? Yeah. But you can, that's not the end all. That's just one metric in a whole wide of things that have to be in place. It have to be in place to see improvement. And so, there's a lot of focus on, that's a magic number of VO2 max. I got to get my VO2 max up. I'm like, that's one little piece.
Exactly. It's funny because I've got a friend who's absolutely obsessed with his VO2 max.
Well, it's because the stupid watches came out with measuring it. And I was just like, okay, they're estimations at best. They are getting better. But if you really want to know, go get lab tested. But it'll change 3 months later. It'll be different. And so, there's so many different things that can impact our performance. Our sleep habits is a big one.
I'm always like, I always advocate for just stop worrying about VO2 max. Stop worrying about the things that are so genetically based and worry about your running economy. Just find ways to just do more with less.
Yeah. It's about training smarter. And the only way you're going to train smarter is you're just going to have to learn more about yourself and how you respond. And and you may have heard this analogy as I kind of think of the statue of David, right? You remember the statue of David? And was it Michelangelo, I think, carved it? Mm-hmm. And so we have to think of ourselves as like we're a big block of granite. And we're a runner inside there, and we have to figure out how to get that runner out, right? So what we do is we start chipping away at pieces, and as we chip away, we get kind of the big blocks out of the way, the basics, right? But then we have to start doing the fine tuning, and we start chipping away at little things. And so we have to continue. If we think of our progress as iterative, we don't think of our progress like we don't start on day one and all of a sudden we're an expert or we do everything purpose. That's why diets fail, right? We try to go all in, we do too much, and we burn out 5 days later, right? And so what ends up happening is chip away and slowly make progress, chip away at the little things, constantly look back and go, okay, where am I at? Where do I need to be? How do I work on it? And then also you got to change things up. You cannot continue to do the same thing. You cannot continue to run the same paces all the time. You can't continue to run the same workouts all the time. I don't know how many people just sit there and go, I do a tempo run in the middle of the week. I do a long run at the end of the week. And then I have a couple other runs in there, right? And they do the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out. And you're just like, no, your body's going to adapt to that, to where that tempo run and that long run ain't helping you. So we can play with some different levers. We can play with the intensity. We can play with the volume. We can start getting you into higher volume and maybe keeping you lower intensity and work on that aerobic capacity and build. Or maybe what we need to do is maybe you have a good aerobic fitness and maybe you just need to be pushed a little harder with some faster drills that'll help you with faster leg turnover. And there's all these different levers we can pull, but if you don't know those levers exist, you're just going to go, oh, well, I'll just go get the advanced version of a particular training plan, or I'll get the experienced version and I'll try that. And there's aspects in there that will help because it's in there, because there is a science behind the training plans if you know who wrote the training plan and what that science was and how that applies to you. But
you're talking my language right now. I've fallen into these traps so many times.
I do too. And honestly, I backward engineer them. I will also tell you another scary thing. Anybody and their brother can put training plans out on the internet.
Exactly.
And sell them. And there are some horrible ones. There's also some ones out there that have been out there for 20 years who haven't changed one bit. And they're very popular. And again, they work. All training plans work to one level or another, but are they optimal for you? I don't know.
Exactly.
We have access in the last 10 years. We've had more access to the stuff that only elite athletes had access to back in the 80s. And now we have access to it in our watch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have more available to us, more information available. The internet's out there, but there's so much stuff out there that's great information, but it may or may not apply to you depending on your background, your situation. So,
but again, right there is the exact reason why somebody who's a specialist in being able to analyze this stuff, which is to say a running coach, is so important. Anybody who's made it this far into this video / podcast, I think is, if they haven't taken away the fact that you are an absolute font of knowledge and running wisdom, then they've just been sleeping through this. But and I'm sure we've, at this point, as I've looked down at the clock for the very first time, believe it or not, this has been flying, and I've been fascinated by this. But as I see how long we've been talking now, we've just gotten all of the RunBuzz listeners and all of my subscribers on YouTube. We've just gotten them through probably a 16 to 20 mile run if they're listening to this right now.
Or a week of runs.
Yeah, true enough, right? True enough.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Yeah, Steve, I just I feel like we've kind of come full circle in the conversation, but just thank you so much
No
for
problem.
doing
Thanks for
this.
having me.
I don't want to I don't want to try to overhype anything, but again, Steve, you are just a great resource. I want to encourage everybody, if you're not already listening to this as a RunBuzz member or as part of the online community, go there, sign up. The community itself is great, but more than anything, Steve, as the person who founded all of this and the person who maintains all of this, thank you. From a lot of people, I've got a lot of friends who've gotten into running after I did. I kind of somewhat bullied them into it until they started to love it on their in their own right. And I always have led them to you, and they're all avid listeners. And thank you for making it such a wonderful place to be. And if anybody needs a running coach or wants a running coach, wants to hit a new PR or just find a way to be healthier as a runner, go to Steve. He's the best there is. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. Steve, I'd like you at this point maybe just to let people know how they can get in touch with you, whether that's social media or any other means.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for all those awesome things that made me feel really good. It's just something I love to do. I just feel like I'm just part of the running community. I don't view myself as that. And so when I hear that, it's like, it's a little weird, but I appreciate it. I have worked very, very hard over the last many years to build this, and I hope it's a resource everybody can do. But as far as getting a hold of me, the best way is, if you're on Facebook, go to just search for RunBuzz. There is a page, like the page, but where you want to be is you want to be in the group, and you can join the group. There's no cost to the group. I do ask you 2 questions. I ask you, are you a runner, and how did you hear about us? And the reason I do that is because if I don't put those 2 questions there, I get all kinds of weirdos and automated bots that end up in the group. And again, that's my filter to make sure that basically you're breathing and you're a human being. And if you fill those 2 questions out, you're in the group and you're part of the club. And that's where we have our discussions. Obviously the RunBuzz podcast is kind of the, it's my love and joy of being able to provide that. I wish I could do it daily, but I do it as often as I can physically get it out there, and still do all the other things in my life. But, I'm on Instagram at RunBuzz. Instagram, I'm still trying to figure out, because I'm not a picture guy. I'm an audio guy. And so even being on video makes me nervous. And so being and then what do I take pictures of? Like, I'm not somebody that's into the selfie thing, but I'm trying. So again, the only way to get better at something is to keep practicing. And so watch, I'm going to be doing live stream soon. I am setting up a studio, and I'm doing a visual video version of this in a live stream format. So I don't know when that's coming. It's coming soon. But I'm still practicing, which means I might not ever get it out. But it's like,
you'll get there.
Yeah. But, the biggest thing also, if somebody wants some 30 days of tips, is go to runbuzz.com. There is a runner's toolkit right on the front page. I'm going to ask you for your email. I'm not going to spam you, but I'll send out 30 days in a row of coaching tips. And they're all different levels, from beginner, some are experienced. Every single one of them is something that you can then put into practice. And then at the end of 30 days, I stop sending you daily emails, and then I send you an email every few weeks, when I have something interesting to say about running or whatever. But that mailing list is free. That is also another free resource that just has, and I don't hold back. I put in some pretty, even in the podcast, I hold nothing back. Like it's everything. And so those would be the best places. Subscribe to the podcast. We put an episode out about every other week. I was doing it weekly for a while, and then I just got to the point where I wasn't sleeping, and
That's not a good thing.
yeah, and so it's a little bit slower, but I won't rush something out unless it's I feel like I've put the effort into it. So those are the best places. The Facebook
just
group.
To kind of reiterate that everybody go back and listen to Steve's backlog. I mean, as you said earlier, there are probably about 140 episodes at this point.
Yeah, 140. We just hit our 6th year.
Wow, that's amazing.
And
they're all chock full of knowledge that's worth having as whatever your experience level as a runner is.
I cringe when I hear the early versions, but people say they love them, and I'm like, but because I'm my own worst enemy, I critique things. But there's some really, really good ones back there that I probably should revisit those topics. But again, I'm one of those people. It's like, well, I did it once. Should I do it again? Like, you can go back and listen to the old ones. Then it's like, no, they probably need an update. Yeah. So I don't know. I wrestle with that as somebody that's creating them. But I definitely think that's a great way to get a ton of information, but yeah, runbuzz.com is the website. That's home base. Instagram, RunBuzz, and obviously Facebook. For those that use Facebook, the group. I got to find something because everybody's moving off Facebook, and I don't know what that's going to do in my group. So I got to figure that out. I don't know. We got to figure out what the next.
I do not know myself yet, but I think all eyes are on that. Yeah,
it's like some sort of Insta, Twittergram, TikTok, whatever, something like that's got to come out to replace it, where we can hang out and have a good group. So.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's where we're at currently.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
Again,
thanks.
I just want to reiterate what a thrill it was for me to have you on my little channel here. And, we're growing quite a bit lately, I do have to say, but it's only because of the quality people like you who have graced me with their presence. And
all right, now you're getting making me blush. No, anyways, no, seriously, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's been so much fun. I love talking about running. I can talk about it.
Me too.
So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you again. It's been about a year or two since we did the podcast.
Exactly. So exactly. So I'm not going to put you on the spot, but one way or another, I'd like to have you back when a little more time has passed, and if we've got some new updates, some exciting news that people might want to know about. But until then, thank you again, sir, and I hope you have a good night. And I guess we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, bye-bye.